It's not. Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Maurizio Ghilardi taught until last year at the Scuola Normale Superiore at Pisa. Since the last year, he is at the Institute of Architecture in Venice. His main studies are regarding Jakob Burckhardt and Abby Warburg, a huge German cultural historian.
There, this is
It's working.
okay.
He won two ERC grants. That means he had two foundings from the European Research Council. One, and both are regarding this platform we are presenting now.
Thank you. What is your name? This is the end. Huh? This is the end. I thank the organizers for the invitation to this conference. But I thank the ERC for the financial support of about 2 million euros for this research. We have decided to split our presentation into 3 parts. Don't panic. We will be brief. The first part is mainly about the development of the platform. The second will focus on the upgrade of the platform. At the end, I will talk less than 4 minutes about the project I'm working on. I would be glad to involve Dove as the key partner for this project. And I also hope to gain the collaboration of Carlos Oliveira, disappear. I don't know where he is, for the role that the Brazil should have in this project. Begin.
Thank you. The semantic digital library burckhardt-source.org is the result of the project The European Correspondence to Jakob Burckhardt, financially supported by the European Research Council and coordinated, as I said, by Professor Maurizio Ghilardi. The project started in June 2010 and ended in May 2015, with the aim to collect and publish in a full critical edition the letters sent to Jakob Burckhardt. A further European founding allows now to release the remaining letters and to integrate and remodel the information data. Who was Jakob Burckhardt? Jakob Burckhardt, Swiss cultural historian, renowned for his contributions to the definition of the Italian Renaissance as an artistic and cultural period, was born in 1818 and died in 1897. He came from a respected Swiss family in Basel, whose male ancestors held offices in church and university. In Basel, he began his studies in theology. After a few semesters, he changed subject and joined the University of Berlin, where he attended lectures by Leopold von Ranke, the most important exponent of source-based history. Under Franz Kugler, he studied art history, at the time just emerging as a new field. After completing his degree, he spent half a year in Italy and wrote his perhaps most famous book, the Cicerone, with which he won in 1855 the first chair of archaeology at the recently founded Technical University in Zurich. In 1858, he returned to Basel for the professorship in history that he held until 1886. From 1874, he also lectured art history, and this discipline he taught until his retirement in 1893. As we just said, Jakob Burckhardt's interest focused on Renaissance as a cultural and art historical age. He treated this period in its entirety, with regard not only for its painting, sculpture, and architecture, but for the social institutions of its daily life as well. It is not accident that he is considered one of the discoverer of and founder of this age, and one of the major progenitors of cultural history. After the publication of the Civilization of Renaissance in Italy and the History of Renaissance in Italy, Burckhardt did not print anything, even if he continued to write. His texts and studies are currently published in a complete critical edition. In the history of Western culture, letters have been an essential vehicle to exchange ideas, develop innovative theories, and assess knowledge. Indeed, the modern communication revolution, which has its roots in humanism, based on the circulation of handwritten letters, and let scholars correspond throughout Europe, forming across national boundaries, across different cultures and languages, a knowledge-based community, the so-called Republic of Letters. Thanks to these networks, scholars assisted and supported each other in personal issues and in research problems and interchanged scientific results. However, letters not only communicate an intellectual content, but they convey also experience of historical facts, an image of a certain moment and sensibility, realities that would otherwise be unknowable. Finally, it should not be forgotten either that a correspondence represents a valuable help in the interpretation of an author's life work. That are the reasons why the scientific value of written correspondence in the humanities have been recognized all the time. Nevertheless, letters are not easy to consult. On the one hand, because they are scattered among distinct owners or preserved in remote archives and libraries. On the other hand, because the reading of manuscripts often requires a paleographic knowledge. As far as the correspondence of Burckhardt is concerned, the reasons just given for the publication of the letters are even more important, because he did not publish any other text after the history of Renaissance in Italy, which was published in 1868. His scientific work was henceforth expressed in lectures, unpublished manuscripts, and in his letters. Consequently, the correspondence is considered part of Burckhardt's scientific macro text. From the historical and social point of view, it should be noted that the correspondence reflects a fragment of the global European history of the 19th century, because it attends the most important political and cultural events of the time. Basel and Switzerland appears as a sort of Linz's tower, from which the author observes and participates with his judgment in the events that took place from 1843 up to 1897 in France, Italy, Switzerland, Austria, and finally in Germany. That's precisely why the corpus of letters represents a relevant source that bears witness to a period marked by important cultural changes. It was during these years that the modern concept of democracy emerged, and in which nascent industrial culture existed in contrast to neo-humanist ideals. But the correspondence doesn't attest on only the impact of this evolution. From the letters emerge also social questions, as the woman's status in the private life or their position in the university sector. In the field of art history, the debate revolves around the establishment of art history as an autonomous discipline, separate from history and or archaeology, confirming Burckhardt's deciding role in this discussion. Moreover, the letters confirm Burckhardt's interest in the museum's policy, as well as his pioneering spirit in recognizing the importance of photography for art history lessons. Not only, if we don't limit our attention on the documentary content of the letters, but look also on their function as a communication media, the correspondence furnish notable informations about social aspects about the letter writers. Indeed, the letters document both the mutual transfer of knowledge, criticism and ideas, as well as the individual relationships, their dynamics and intensity. For such reasons, the purpose of the platform is to reconstruct not only a segment of Jakob Burckhardt's scientific macro text, but also his perspective over the social arena which he took part in, recreating his network of relations as well as his outlook of academic and non-academic subjects that the daily dealt with. The corpus of letters to Jakob Burckhardt embraces 1,112 missives from 467 senders. The geographical distribution of the writers reflects the personal relationships and the consignee's field of research. In particular, the fact that art history first developed into an independent academic subject in German-speaking countries, and that Burckhardt's publications made a decisive contribution to determining the scientific basis, proves to be relevant. Accordingly, the majority of the interlocutors are concentrated in the German-speaking world, while Burckhardt's interest in Italian culture and artistic history explain why the second largest linguistic group consists of Italian correspondents. How published the letter to Jakob Burckhardt? Current information technology has challenged the theoretical understanding and the methodological approach in editing correspondence, providing innovative technologies for publishing and disseminating this legacy. The choice of relying on a digital library for the publication of the letters to Jakob Burckhardt was due by the challenge to join scholarly edition and digital technologies. The advantages of a digital library compared to a purely paper-based edition are obvious. It allows the manuscript findings to be presented visually, giving every user the ability to compare the manuscript findings with the editor's choice. The concept lying behind the project complies the conviction that a printed edition does not always enable the description of the manuscript findings, nor the editor's decisions in a comprehensive manner. In other words, the digital library enhances the transparency and insightfulness of the editorial work. Moreover, an online edition can be constantly renewed and supplemented, what we are doing in this moment, as we will explain in a few minutes. And of course, a digital edition offers a full text research and the data interchange. At the present, Burckhardt's correspondence is accessible in a hybrid edition as far as one understands the technical term in a broader meaning. That is, in the sense that the letters from Jakob Burckhardt are available in a printed edition and the letters to Jakob Burckhardt in a digital edition. In the near future, the Burckhardt Source team intends to append Burckhardt's letters to the digital library. Let us now illustrate the current state of Jakob Burckhardt.source.org by briefly describing the structure of the digital library and the different interfaces. From the beginning, Burckhardt Source was envisioned with a clear differentiation between the attributes of a letter and its content. The attributes were formalized in a metadata set distinguished from the text they refer to. The encoding of the letter was carried out in TEI, which provided the best procedure to encode the author's variants. Moreover, TEI was de facto standard exchange format used for digital editions. In order to be visualized and annotated, the TEI files were transformed in a HTML representation, which was later annotated with a semantic annotation manager. The architecture of the platform was based on a backend module called Muruka, where both letter and metadata were stored. The backend was linked with an ad hoc vocabulary management server called Corbo, which contained records from Freebase, a collaborated knowledge base. The Burkhardt source front end is divided into different areas corresponding likewise to access points for the users, collections and highlights. These anthologies were created to offer to non-experts an introduction and a clue to discover the digital library. For the 6 collections, the editors have individuated in the correspondence recurrent themes and finished reading all the letters according to this fil rouge. Each collection proposes an introduction and suggests 16 letters. The anthology Europe, for instance, units letters which treat relevant historical events. Thanks to the individual observation by the contemporaries, the letters furnish a subjective impression and or judgment regarding their time. Under the title Bode are collected all preserved and in main part unpublished letters between Jakob Burkhardt and Wilhelm von Bode, the German art historian and curator. Another access to the correspondence, called Highlights, is proposed on the right side of the front end. There, the editors suggest a choice of particularly significant letters from a cultural, historical, and social point of view. A direct way to explore the correspondence is given by the full-text tool Browse. It is a faceted navigation system allowing to refine the results by applying multiple filters. Selecting a category on the left side, year, sender, compilation, or receiving place, the research result is obtained from the metadata or letter context, while the categories on the right side relate to the semantic annotations. It goes without saying that the combination of 2 or more filters permits a deeper and more specific analysis of the corpus. Here, the user chose the filters year 1892 and the two categories place and artwork, and he found 2 letters which answer to the questions, to the filters. It is possible to view each letter in 2 interfaces, semantic edition and philological version. Each letter is permanently addressable and a citation recommendation is offered. The default visualization is the so-called semantic edition, which displays the edited text. In other words, the text content is critically established as a continuous text and enriched with the 4 annotation categories: persons, places, artworks, and bibliographies, which you see on the right. These entities, which had been considered particularly important for correspondence, were edited by the Burkhardt source team to the Freebase platform and then stored in the internal vocabulary and semantic web basket manager Corbo. By clicking on the annotated passage, the user can retrieve the comment. In this case, we clicked on the text fragment Marsan, and you see here the indications regarding this person, this historical person. The interface of philological version places next to each other the manuscript and the diplomatic transcription. On the left side, there is the digitized manuscript, which can be enlarged, which results in a better reading. The scan provides also an idea of the materiality of the manuscript. It shows the paper quality, the author's handwriting, the style of handwriting, the ink, and so on. These features not only delineate the writer, but also give an insight of the relationship between sender and receiver. The more negligent the material aspects of a letter, the more informal the relationship between sender and recipient, and vice versa. On the right side, there is the transcription with the author's variants. In this visualization, edition philology meets information technology. On one hand, the transcription reveals the author's variants. On the other, it discloses the features of the editor's work. In fact, this version increases above all the understanding of the editorial work. A drop-down menu contains all the variants, and user can filter a single type. In this case, the edition of the writer's edition is interlinear, and the author decided where the edition had to be situated. That information is provided by the pop-up. In the section metadata, gives important contextual informations. That is indications of the actors, places, and dates of the letter. Furthermore, the user can find here the description of the manuscript. Another information concerns the conversation. Is the letter a single communication act, or is it an answer to an earlier letter? Last but not least, a short abstract summarizes the content of the letter. Clicking on the red font or on the spots, it will be visualized an additional layer with more information. As I mentioned before, the project Burkhardt Source benefits actually from a second European founding, OpenPAL, which serves to modernize the platform. While the system of the platform was able to visualize and annotate a digital edition, and the original architecture was stable and guaranteed the workflow, in 2016, Burkhardt Source was confronted with the demise of Freebase. The role of Freebase was key to the whole infrastructure because it helped disambiguate entities and providing unique, uniform resource identifier. People, places, and artworks were edited by Burkhard Source to the Freebase platform and then copied in the local structured query language database for easy and quick access. Freebase was, in fact, taken offline in 2016 and the records made available only as a single resource description framework. The lack of semantic graph technology in the backend, plus the onerous size of the Freebase database, created several issues for the platform. A significant number of propositions encoded in the Freebase database regarding people, places, and artworks were not online anymore and were difficult to obtain. After some time, it becomes quite clear that it was necessary to migrate to a newer foundation. The first task was to regain the data initially entered in Freebase and re-import them into a stable structure. Reusing the identifiers from Freebase stored in our platform, we retrieved and detract from the Freebase dump the resource description framework, triples about the object described in the project. After loading them on a triple store, they have been reconciled with, when possible, with Wikidata, a community-created and curated knowledge base and central data repository for the Wiki project. Currently, more than 1,100 records documenting persons described within the Burkhard Source project were important in Wikidata. Oh, I left there, huh? Adesso tocca a te. No, siamo indietro. Siamo qui, no? Sì, siamo.
Okay, Kobo was not the only part of the initial architecture being reconstructed. Muraka, the database containing the information about the letters, has also been reviewed. The information was normalized, terminological entries were linked with appropriate terms in the known thesauri, such as Getty Art and Architecture Thesauros. And the records were linked with the appropriate equivalent from external sources. After cleaning, normalizing, linking, and enriching the data, it was necessary to ask if the current system was still advantageous, or the current technological scenario is able now to offer a more beneficial solution for the problem. In our case, while the work done until now has proven of great benefit, more can be done to interconnect the source to other knowledge sources or similar projects which can benefit from our information, and we can benefit from them. In order to do so, we need to build an integrative approach able to define a framework under which we can share knowledge with others. The best technological solution for such kind of objective is given by the framework of the semantic web. The semantic web is an extension, I think we have to, the semantic web, it is an extension of the current web, which use standards for ensuring data sharing throughout common formats and exchange protocols. While the traditional web infrastructure allows the browsing of a global information space using textual hyperlink within web pages, the semantic web and linked data framework use machine-readable structures where the meaning of the described resources is formally defined in order to link datasets and proposition together. The result, the web of data, is the web of resources described by diverse institutions and authorities which are linked together. The diversity in respect to the original web is that the machines are able to aggregate information on the basis of their explicit semantic, providing users with engine able to answer query and not simply provides documents which talk about the subject matter. The use of the semantic web framework allows us to use a system able to host and link together a knowledge coming from diverse projects, making the project one important node in the network of historical linked resources which can be queried, browsed together. We translate the previous model in semantic proposition encoded using CIDOC CRM. It's just a code for way of for an ontology. The mapping document the letter 1811, part of the exchange between Heinrich Wölfling and Jakob Burckhardt. Following the correspondence model, we defined three different activities: compilation, sending, and receiving. It is possible to see in the graph that letter 1811 was composed by Wölfling in Munich, and from there sent to the address St. Albanvorstadt, Basel, Schweiz, at the time corresponding to Burckhardt's house. We associate the city of Munich to the event compilation and the address of Burckhardt house to both the action of sending and receiving the letter. The relation within receiving event is subtler because it has been declared that the event itself, the reception of the letter, took place in a specific geometrical place which corresponds to the address indicated in sending event and was carried out in the role of receiver by Burckhardt himself. It has to be noticed that we modeled the receiving address as a representation of a geometrical place, the polygon occupied by the house of Burckhardt at the time. The receiving address, in fact, is to be considered only as a name identifying a specific extent in space and not as the identifier of the house of Burckhardt, which is not stable, is not a stable entity, but a four-dimensional one because it changes in location over the time. The modeling of the contextual information is vital to understand an artifact, but in the case of a communication object such as a letter, we need to explore another critical level of the description, which is the content. The creation of a digital scholarly edition entails the creation of one or more textual representation which can be encoded and used very differently. We usually work within three diverse levels: the content, its representation, and an argumentation over it. We started our mapping describing two main processes: the transcription and the digitization of the letter 811 previously documented. The transcription is defined as an E65 creation event carried out by a scholar and resulting in the creation of two digital representations, one in HTML and the other one in TEI. Both are documented in respect to their location using a class locator and a property, the location. As underlined by the previous slide, the augmentation level uses the digital representation in order to encode Alsatian over the original physical object. Following this schema, we use the HTML representation as the target for our proposition, encoding them as annotation using the web annotation data model. This model provides a simple framework for expressing the relationships between a set of three connected resources, an annotation, a body, and a target. The data model is flexible enough to accommodate diverse purposes, and for such reason, it defines the identity of the annotation as an aboutness statement in relation to a target, which is the resource or part of subject to the annotation. The body and the target are related by the class annotation. Final consideration. So some issues were encountered during this work, and it is important to underline them. The very first is the issue of the historical entities versus present-day entities. The letters refer to cities which do not exist anymore because now aggregated into one, a name which does not identify the city anymore. Königsberg is the perfect example. Some letters refers to the city within the Kingdom of Prussia, which is now recognized as Kaliningrad and part of Russia. Such a big city has an entry in Wikidata, which we can reuse. However, and the question remains open, should we point at the current geographical location or to the political entity the letters refers to? Another important one is technical, and it is about the selector of the annotation. We use XPath to identify the position of a portion of the text in the document, but if this position changes slightly over the time, it will point to a diverse textual segment. It is necessary to implement alternatives to this method. The third and probably the most difficult to tackle is the lack of a complete RDF-based workflow easy to implement. A large project still needs to spend a significant amount of resources for the development of ad hoc solutions for recording semantic statements and save them in a graph. Many projects cannot face such type of challenge, both in terms of people and resources. Therefore, standard platform able to offer such type of service should be developed. While solution such as research space appears to arrive in a stable form now on the market, they still do require a higher level of knowledge, capacity, and resource, which not everyone can sustain over time.
Good. This is the end. Huh? 4 minutes, no more. First problem. My opinion is that the new technologies without research are empty. Only communication. The reason not sufficient. But that research without new technologies is a form of an antiquarian mentality. This is the problem. What is the future for this platform? But above all, which perspectives has this experience opened up? There are 2 central points on which I would like to speak briefly. The Burckhardt source platform is just a limited starting point for a wider project. First finding, in Europe, there is no platform that is able to accommodate different researches related to the culture. We must go further. Visual and the paper material is not an inert heritage. It has an historic and a cultural function. We need to go beyond mere digitization and create a platform that is alive, like a no-self referential living organism. Otherwise, we can only create an antique shop for many alien material that don't talk to each other, as the situation for Europe. Second finding, so far, almost all the platforms funded by the ERC are related to European culture, but not the translation and the functions of the meaning of the European cultures outside Europe. The perception of our heritage is based on the psychic functions which relate visual representation to cognitive types, allowing us to make perceptual judgment on the physical objects. The recording of these types of affirmation is a fundament for understanding and analyzing the cultural heritage. The project I propose aims to organize information related to visual works based on the identity and the symbolic value of their individual constituent element. Their translation, that is transformation into other culture, that is the function that European culture has for other cultures. There are not ideas, but cultural and material artifacts, images, text, and so on. A new computer platform could be used as a driver for the foundation of this new ontology. I should record that the statement about the differential structural units a relation of a visual representation, differentiating between object and interpretative text. I gave you just one example, as I've been at the end. The emblems of Alciati were interpreted by the Jesuits to educate the Brazilian needs, let's say so, in the Catholic religion. This is a process of a cultural translation, not transmission, translation. In its visual, material, and functional aspect is a way to show the extent to which European culture has served to make a contact and to change other cultures by grafting into their tradition. This is the project I am forcing and which I would like people, like a dove, and some Brazilian institution to participate in. I would add that the good relationships with the Gregorian University in Rome that preserves an enormous and almost unknown visual and documentary heritage could, for example, allow us to discover how the Jesuit culture was spread in countries such as China, where the Jesuits were able to create new media for visual communication to spread the Catholic religion. But I also think of institutions like the University of Venice that could be interested in investigating the translation of architecture models, for example, in the Mediterranean part of Africa or in Asia Minor. The financial source is the ARC Synergy project, which also provides for the participation of a non-European country. This is a visionary proposal. I have a dream, a small dream. But I believe that the future lies in the being inside European culture and at the same time outside Europe. And perhaps this could be the cultural and political answer to those who wholly act as the guardians of the borders. Thanks. It's a project, a scientific project on the work. But we must see the future. In this age, where the nationality, where the boundaries are strong. And there is, I understand that the future is to break these boundaries. And that how the European culture survived. How? Survive because explain how his transmission transformed into other cultures in Brazil, in Asia Minor. This is the future to understand our situation. Is not to know only the research, is a value, a political value. I understand that there is at the table, it's very important, there is the letters, the others, but we must see to the future. And there is the Jesuits in Brazil, for example, transform the pictures and world of Alciati to teach the Brazilian people for the religion. This is the point. This is we must study. How? Because. Why? In which way to understand these ways? This is, for me, is the only solution. In Europe, with the political situation in Europe, with the German, French, Italy, England, there is all not, but there is in the world, here in Brazil, where I repeat, we are Brazil. Natalia, is it sufficient? No.
I want to thank you very much, Professor Ghilardi and Susan and you for your presence here. I worked several years. I had the opportunity to come to Italy by invitation of Professor Ghilardi at a wonderful place called Cortona. Cortona, it's a place from the Scuola Normale Superiore di Pisa that Professor Ghilardi teaches there. Scuola Normale are the most important higher education institutions in Italy in the Napoleonic traditions, like in l'École Normale in France, and those are the research, the most advanced research institutions in Italy. And it was a pleasure, and not only a intellectual pleasure, but it was very much, but also a culinary.
And the wine.
I very much recommend Cortona. But I want to thank you very much for not only coming to Brazil and presenting in the conference and participating and bringing the semantic vision that I learned a lot in all the meetings and seminars with the developers of the software for the Burkhardt project. But I see that you are continuing and advancing and making very important advances. He is a doctoral student, and he was photographing your presentation because he already makes the calculations how it may serve his development of his thesis. So you brought a vision, and it's very important. And now for your day of a project, you have a very good fertile ground here when you proposed this vision, and it is coming in fertile ground, and I'm sure that something very good will come out. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
No more comments. So I would like to thank you very much, Professor, and your assistants, collaborator, and I hope we'll be back together in some other Eva Minerva. And let's say, Paulo, quer falar alguma palavra? Obrigado, obrigado. Então, eu também agradeço a todos e espero que tenham um bom retorno, back home. Pavel estava aqui, acho que saiu. Pavel está aqui de pé. Have a nice return home as well. Turma de Assis também, Dov e a esposa. Acho que o resto é de São Paulo, né? Brasília. Elaine, você já é... Eu olho para a Elaine, ela está na sala de aula lá. Bom, agradeço muito a todos e bom descanso. Até a próxima.